Good morning. We're going to start over again because Facebook Live, I hate it. I hate it on my computer, even though it's a better overall final product. I can't get anything to do right on it. So I have my cup of coffee, have my Churchill Downs coffee mug, and I'll show you in case you missed it before. You can see the inside. It's a horse race. I love it. Greg got this for me several months ago when we were at Churchill Downs for something. So, welcome to Monday Morning Coffee and Chat. I'm Hallee Bridgeman, and I'm coming to you from my home office in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I forgot to put my sunshade down, so here's what I would, if I end up that way, let me just scooch us over so that I don't end up doing that accidentally. So, hi, happy last Monday of June. 4th of July is this weekend. That's crazy. We're already like a third of the way into the summer. And I have a friend who's been counting down like days since social isolating began. And yesterday she said it was 100 days. And so I haven't looked at a calendar to like sit and count the days, but I would be interested to see how many days we've been social isolating because our family is still like strictly social isolating. And will continue to do so indefinitely at this point. But I miss my parents though. I was telling Greg I want to like drive there and sit outside, like stay in a hotel and just go sit on their front porch for a day and then come home. So I'm looking at my calendar now to see when I can manage that. But hi. So today's question is, would you be willing to go over your writing process with us? Because last week I mentioned something something about writing, and that was like a question inside the video was, would I be willing to talk about my writing process? And so I am happy to talk about my writing process because I actually teach a class on it. And the class is like 50 minutes long. I'm not going to give you a class, but it's something that I actually have like organized thoughts about and sat down and worked out, how I do it and what my process is. And so writing process. So if I'm starting a new series, it's a little bit slightly different process than if it's a series I'm already in, because number one, I have to build the world, which means I have to generate the world in which my characters live and work and interact. And it may be that they live in a city that or it may be that they live in a city that I've completely made up. Like my Red Blood Bluegrass series, that's a small town Kentucky suspense series. That town is completely made up. It is nowhere in the world. And everything about that town I've had to create. I had to draw maps. I had to establish the government. I had to create how the dynamics of the community are. And I did that for a couple of years before I started writing it. I'd been like gradually building this world. And then if it's a city that I don't know, I have to visit it virtually or in person. I have to immerse myself into it. I have to understand the city. And so I have to build the world. And it would be just much as if I was like creating like an entire world, like in sci-fi. Hi, Susan. Yes, thank you for telling me about that. I hate Facebook Live. It doesn't work for me, and I don't know what's wrong with my computer with it, because I can do anything all day long on my super duper wonderful computer except Facebook Live. Good morning, Latoya. And so I don't know, but I went to my phone and that's working. So tell me if something happens again. And I'm in the exact same spot using the exact same Wi-Fi. I hate Facebook Live, but back to me. Forget my complaining. I don't want to complain. All right. So I build my world. And then I develop my characters. And this is the most important part of my character of my book writing is my characters, because my books are character driven. And so everything about my book always has everything to do with my characters. And so the characterization is important. So the things that I do to do that is, I don't sit down with like a worksheet, but I could sit down and create a worksheet about my characters, but I let them kind of percolate in my brain. And I look at pictures, and I build Pinterest boards, and I establish, tattoos, scars, experiences, family dynamics. All of this stuff is like kind of like building in my brain. And sometimes it's immediate. Sometimes I know everything as soon as I get started. Sometimes I have to like just let it kind of grow. And so once I have the world built, and once I have the characters created, then the first thing that I do is like a very generalized outline-ish kind of thing. And what it is in chapter 1, this happens. In chapter 2, this happens. And I don't have one created. I thought I had a whiteboard with it on, but I also have, when I'm developing my characters, I use a whiteboard, and I use, all the different colors of markers, and I create like circles, and I'll say, like him on one side and her on the other, because, I write romance. And so what are his internal conflicts, and what are her internal conflicts? What are their external conflicts? What are the conflicts in bringing them together romantically, internally and externally? And what are the suspense elements, if I'm writing a suspense book, external and internal? And then what are the spiritual arcs for both characters? Because I write faith-filled characters. My stories always have a faith arc to them. My characters go through a faith process. And it might be that they don't know Christ and they come to know Christ. It might be that they are a prodigal and returning. That's what I'm writing right now. It might be that they have had like a spiritual, I forget the word, like they've just broken away from God for some reason. Or it might be that they are just kind of vanilla, and that there's nothing that has any kind of positive or negative impact on their faith at all. And so all of those things, so I do that on a whiteboard so that I can create, crisis. Thank you, Melissa. Oh, I hate words. So I write way better than I speak. So I take that whiteboard, and it's a huge whiteboard, and I spend an entire day like developing the conflicts and all of that stuff, so that when it comes time to put my story together, I've pretty much done it at that point. Like that's the story. All of those elements coming together into the center are those stories, is that story. So then I take that, what I've done on the whiteboard, and I do like this basic outline, and I use a program called Scrivener, and Scrivener has a cork board thing. So what it looks like is like a bulletin board with index cards pinned to it. And so the index cards are the chapters, and I say, chapter 1, this happens. Chapter 2, this happens. Chapter 3, this happens. And so then I have all of my story in like a, an organized board. And I can see where there's holes, or I can see where there's action, 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 action. Okay, I need to insert a downtime, and I need to insert a fluff chapter, or I need to insert a character development chapter. And I can see where it, then I can grow the story, because sometimes I write novellas where it has to be action, 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 action. And sometimes I write 100,000 word novels with 30 chapters, and I have to add like the rich character and story development that I tend to skim through in the shorter stories. So once I have this happens, this happens, this happens, then the story is in my mind, the conflicts are in my mind, and the arcs, romance, suspense, spiritual, are in my mind. And then I'm able to start writing. And my first draft is almost entirely action dialogue. It's almost like a script. It's, he walked in the room, he said this, she said this back, he left the room. And that's almost it. There's not a lot more to my first drafts. I will put in brackets something important about the scene that I need to remember to add. Or I will put in brackets, this is a really intense emotional moment. Something like that to remind myself of what I'm seeing in my mind as I'm writing. Because basically what it is when I start, it's almost like a movie starts playing in my mind. And that first draft is just me getting out what I see. And so as fast as I can, I like just kind of dump the story. And then it's done. And that allows me to stop thinking about it. And it allows me to then go back into it and look at it creatively. Because one of the things that I have is that the closer I get to the end of a book, the more I'm unable to do anything else. Like that's all I can think about. And so I need to get this brain dump going of the story itself. And once that's out, then I can go in, I have notes, and set the scenes. And so at the beginning of every scene, it's just action dialogue, like there's nothing else. And so I haven't described the scene, I haven't set the setting, I haven't done anything. And oftentimes, like, I want my scene to reflect the conflict. And so I want rain, if it's going to be in a harsh conflict time, the rain is going to be dark and stormy and infringing on the ability to like actively work through what's going on. Or if it's a nice happy scene, then the rain will be a gentle sound, a pleasant sound, a relaxing atmosphere, something that cocoons you into this moment of pleasure and joy. And so I set the scene. I described the room. He walked into the room. Well, what did the room look like? And that's when I like build the world inside my character's actions and reactions. And then I go through from the beginning all the way to the end, setting my scene. And this is not as easy for me as the action and dialogue because I am not a visual person. And so it's hard for me to walk into an empty room and imagine it furnished. I have a really hard time placing 3 dimensions into empty space. And so that's a lot of my time setting scenes is looking through, like, I'll find a house for sale and that is my character's house. And I'm hoping that the pictures through the realtor's website give me furnished rooms because that's what I use. And I have to look at the rooms furnished and ready to go in order for me to be able to write them. And so I spend a lot of time looking up pictures when I'm setting scenes. And then I go back to the beginning again, and this is the hardest part for me, is that I have to go in and add thoughts and feelings. At this point now I have to like give you those characters that are in my mind that I know so well. And it is so hard for me to do that because I feel like if she walks in and she slams her coffee cup on the table in those actions and dialogue, you ought to know what she's thinking. But apparently I have to add it. I have to go in and say, okay, here's her thoughts and feelings. But the hard part about doing thoughts and feelings is this whole idea of show, don't tell. So I have to give you her thoughts and feelings without saying she was angry and slammed the coffee cup on the counter. And so you have to somehow, create the chaos in her mind. And why does she slam that coffee cup on the table without saying she was angry? When to me, the slamming of the coffee cup should be enough clue. but my editors don't agree with me. So I have to actually write the words. It's the hard part. And the feelings, and the thoughts and the things that give the reader that connection with the character and make it real. Because again, like I said, my books are all character driven. And so what I want to do is create these characters that readers feel like are real, and that they can find some way to connect with them. And when they can do that, then the book becomes real to them, and the characters become part of their lives and part of what they experience. And that gives the reader like the richest, most fulfilling read. And so I can't do that with action and dialogue. That takes those thoughts and feelings. And so basically, by the time I have finished from beginning to end, I've gone through like 5 times. And then I go into like the self-edit. And so as I'm going, like it's not, I don't say, okay, you're only doing setting right now, don't add any thoughts and feelings. But right now I'm going through the setting of this latest book, and my intent is to be done with all of the setting of all of the book today, so that tomorrow I can go in and add all of the thoughts, and then the next day add all the feelings. But in the midst of it, I'll like catch things and I'll say, oh, I need to add this here before I forget that I need to put that there. And then, another thing is like adding that chapter hook at the beginning, and then the thing at the end of the chapter that makes you, well, I'll just read one more page and then keep going. That's the kind of thing I also, have to go in and layer those in too. So anyway, I call it writing in layers. That's my process. I can write very, very quickly that way. Between now and September 1st of 2021, I have 6 books I have to have finished. And 2 of them have to be done by the end of September of this year. And so I have, in my schedule, I have allowed 2 months per book. And so that's not a lot of time. But when I write this way and I'm steady and consistent with it, I can fly through a book. And the end result is full and rich and, what my readers expect. So that's my writing process. Thank you for that question. I loved it. If you have a question for me, you can ask it through my social media or on my website. There's on the sidebar, it says Ask Hallee. And I will be happy to include your question into one of my Monday morning coffee and chats. Melissa, that's just, I've always written that fast, except for the last 2 years probably. I've only put out 2 books a year, and it's strange for me not to, so I'm getting back into it. All right. So y'all have a great day, and I will see you next Monday. God bless you.